Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics, Dio here. Today we have a 2011 Honda Pilot with a 3.5 liter. This vehicle is here in our shop for a timing belt replacement. So in this video I'm going to show you how to remove and replace a timing belt on this vehicle. This vehicle has over 130,000 miles, so it's due for a timing belt replacement. And there is also a growling noise coming from under the hood when the engine is running. So I'm gonna start the engine so I can have you listen to that noise. And after that, we're gonna remove and replace the timing belt on this vehicle. So now let's start the engine and listen to the noise. As you can hear, the engine is running. There is a growling noise coming from the timing belt area. Okay, so right there. I hope the camera is picking that up. So we're gonna replace the timing belt. And I'm sure after we replace the timing belt and the idler pulleys, this noise will be gone after that. Okay, so now I'm gonna turn off the engine so we can get this timing belt replaced. So now the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the engine cover. The engine cover has some plastic screws over here that we have to twist. Okay, and then we're just gonna lift it like that. So here comes the engine cover. So I'm gonna get it out of the way. So now we're gonna remove the serpentine belt. To remove the serpentine belt, we're gonna have to get the tension of the serpentine belt. So I'm going to show you what we have to do so we can get the tension of the serpentine belt. So I hope you guys can see this bolt over here. So this over here, let me show you guys. So this over here is the serpentine belt tensioner. I'm going to get a socket on this bolt and push it towards the back of the vehicle to get the tension of the serpentine belt. Okay, once I push that back, we won't have any tension on the serpentine belt, and then I'll be able to remove the serpentine belt. So I was able to push the serpentine belt tensioner back. So now the serpentine belt can come out. So here comes the serpentine belt. I'm gonna get it out of the way. So now the next step is going to be removing the power steering pump. Now before we get the power steering pump removed, I'm going to get this coolant reservoir out of the way first. So we're just going to sit the coolant reservoir out of the way. Alright, so now I'm gonna disconnect the supply hose of the power steering pump. Now we're gonna put this pig mat over here to catch all the oil that's gonna come out of here. Because we don't want to make a mess. So now I'm gonna push this power steering fluid reservoir just back here and out of the way. So now the next step is going to be undoing the power steering pump bolts. The power steering pump has one bolt over here. You have to get access to them through the pulley over here. Alright, so we removed the first one, so now we're gonna remove the second one. Alright, so as you can see, our power steering pump is removed. I'm gonna remove the bolts first. So now we're gonna remove this bracket over here so we can push this AC line a little bit out of the way. Alright, so we got the power steering pump out of the way. So now the next step is going to be removing the upper timing belt covers. These covers over here that cover the camshaft sprockets. I'm going to undo this little hold down over here first that hold the wiring harness down. We're going to have to remove the serpentine belt tensioner, so we can remove this cover over here, the cover that covers the front cam. But while we're up here, we can already remove the back cover. Alright, so here comes our back timing cover. This is what covers the back camshaft sprocket, okay? This cover has 4 bolts. So there was one here, and another one here, and 3, 4, 5, okay? So I'm gonna put all its bolts over here. So now I'm gonna get this out of the way. So now the next step is gonna be, we're gonna raise up the vehicle. And after we raise up the vehicle, we're gonna remove the right front tire so we can get access to the crankshaft pulley. So now let's raise up the vehicle. We got the tire removed, so now we're gonna remove the fender liner so we can get full access to the crank pulley and the serpentine belt tensioner up here. So the fender liner has some plastic rivets over here that we have to remove. So we're gonna remove these plastic rivets. So that we can get the fender liner removed. Alright, so the fender liner is removed. So we're not gonna remove it completely. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna push it out of the way. It's a very flexible plastic, so it's not gonna break. Okay? Okay. So we can just push it like that out of the way. So now I'm gonna bring you over here so I can show you what we're gonna remove next. So now the next step is gonna be removing this crankshaft pulley bolt. The crankshaft pulley bolt is a 19mm bolt. So we're gonna undo that. So just like that, our crankshaft pulley bolt is removed. So I'm gonna remove it completely. So now we're gonna remove our crankshaft pulley. So we're gonna pry it out gently. Just like that, we're gonna rock it back and forth slowly. Now you have to be careful as you're removing the crankshaft pulley. You have to be careful because this keyway over here, this key sometimes comes out very easily. So you have to make sure that your key stays in place, okay? So now we got the crankshaft pulley removed. So here's what we got after removing the crankshaft pulley. So now the next step is gonna be removing the serpentine belt tensioner. So we're gonna undo this bolt over here and then this one over here for this little strut that puts tension on the serpentine belt tensioner, okay? After we remove the tensioner, the next step is gonna be removing this 10mm bolt for the timing belt cover. So this bolt over here is a 17mm bolt. So we're gonna undo that one first. And then we're gonna undo this one over here. We got the first bolt removed. So now we're gonna remove this one up here. Alright, so here comes the serpentine belt tensioner. So right there, we're gonna get it out of the way. So basically what I was doing earlier with this serpentine belt tensioner, so to get the tension of the serpentine belt, I put a socket over here, okay? This was a 19mm socket, and then you push it towards the car, okay? You push the socket here, and then you push it back, okay? To get the tension of the serpentine belt. So now let's get this tensioner out of the way. Alright, so we got all the bolt for the timing cover removed. So now our timing cover should be able to come out now. So here comes the timing cover. I'm gonna remove it. So now before we go back under the hood, I'm gonna turn this crankshaft gear to line up our timing marks. I'm gonna remove this plate over here. Now you have to make sure that you put this next to the bottom timing belt cover, because what you don't want to do is putting everything back together and forgetting to install this little plate. Okay, because you can forget to install that very easily. So our timing marks are over here, so I'm gonna wipe them down so I can show you our timing marks. So it looks like someone painted our timing marks white. There's an arrow over here, okay, and there's another corresponding arrow over here on this tooth just above this key. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn the engine and line up this mark over here on the timing gear, on the crankshaft gear, and this arrow over here. Let me zoom you guys in so you can see. We're gonna install our crankshaft bolt so we can turn the engine with it. And when you turn the engine, you have to make sure that you turn the engine clockwise. Okay, you don't want to turn the engine counterclockwise. Make sure you turn the engine clockwise, because if you turn the engine counterclockwise, you can run the risk of damaging internal components of the engine. Okay, and look at this, guys. I don't know if you can see. This timing belt is actually disintegrating. Look at this. We got some rubber material here. Okay. So now let's turn the engine. I'm going to line up our mark. Okay, so right there, it looks like our timing marks are lined up. So our timing marks down over here at the crankshaft sprockets are lined up. Now we don't know if our camshaft timing marks are lined up, because we also have timing marks on the camshaft sprockets that have to be lined up as well. Okay, so we're down over here. I'm gonna show you these marks again, and after that we're gonna lower the vehicle so we can check our timing marks at the camshaft. Because one revolution of the crankshaft equals half revolution of the camshaft sprocket. Okay, so we do have slack over here on the tensioner side. Now I'm gonna show you our timing marks one more time. So here are our timing marks. So right there, I hope you can see this white tooth lined up with that arrow over there. So our marks down here are lined up. So now let's lower the vehicle and check our timing marks at the camshaft sprocket. So before we lower the vehicle, I wanted to show you the timing belt tensioner. So this is the timing belt tensioner over here. It has two 10mm bolts. These are the bolts I'm gonna undo so I can remove this timing belt tensioner. Okay, and this is our tensioner adjuster. It has a bolt up there, a 14mm bolt. Once we undo that bolt, this adjuster will come out, and then there's an idler pulley over here. Once we remove this 14mm bolt, that will come out as well. And then we're gonna remove this motor mount bracket. Okay, so before we remove those, let's lower the vehicle and double check our timing marks up top. Alright, so now we're gonna remove the timing cover that covers the front camshaft. Alright, so here comes the cover that covers the front camshaft. Okay, so it has 5 bolts as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're gonna put all its bolts over here. So now we're gonna get it out of the way. So now we're gonna check our timing marks. So right over here we have our camshaft sprocket. So this is our mark over here. This is the timing mark. As you can see, someone painted it white, and our marks are not lined up. Our timing marks up here on this camshaft is not lined up. So we have our timing mark over here, and its corresponding mark is down over here. Okay, I hope you can see this mark. Okay, so we have to spin the engine another full turn on the crankshaft so we can get half a turn on the camshaft. Okay, so we have to go another 360 on the crankshaft so that this mark can come up here and line up with this mark. Okay, so let me zoom you guys in a little bit so you can see. So we got this mark over here, so we're gonna line up this one with this up here. Okay, and then on the back cam, let me show you the mark on the back cam. So it's really tight over here. Alright, so do you see this white mark over here? Okay, so our other mark, I hope you can see that white mark over there on the camshaft sprocket. So we're gonna line up this mark down here with this mark over here. Okay, we're gonna do that by spinning the engine clockwise so we can get all our timing marks lined up. So now let's spin the engine. Alright, so our timing marks on the crankshaft pulley are lined up. So now let's check our camshaft marks. Our timing marks actually are jumped a little bit. Let me show you. On the camshaft over here, our timing marks are like 2 teeth off. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I spun the crankshaft pulley another full revolution. So look at the marks over here on the front camshaft sprocket. So this mark is supposed to be lined up over here. So this is supposed to line up here. And as you can see, we're like 3 teeth off. Now let's check the back cam. I hope you guys can see. So it's basically the same thing on this side. As you can see, this mark over here is also off. You see that? So that's off. This white mark is supposed to be lined up with this. So now let's go to the crankshaft gear and check our marks there. Because as far as I can see, our marks at the crankshaft gear are lined up. Let's double check our marks. So I'm gonna remove the tool. So here are our timing marks. As you can see, this mark over here is lined up with this mark over here. Okay, our marks down here are lined up. Okay, so our camshaft jumped timing. Okay, our camshafts are off. I hope there isn't any damage internally, because this can damage the valves. I'm gonna let the customer know, but we're gonna get everything lined up and install the new belt, and hopefully there won't be any problems after that. So we're good down here. So let's go back under the hood and look at the camshaft sprockets again. So as you saw on the crankshaft gear, all our timing marks are lined up, but over here on the camshaft sprocket, our timing marks are not lining up. This mark over here is supposed to get lined up here. So we're about 1, 2, 3, so 3 teeth off. And it's the same thing on the back cam over there. Okay, you see those white marks? So same thing. Now, what happened? What caused this? So I believe what caused this is this slack over here. Because there's a lot of slack. I don't know if you'll be able to tell. There's a lot of slack, okay, on the timing belt. You see all this slack? I mean, there is supposed to be a little bit of slack over here, but this slack is too much. There is excessive slack on the timing belt. So the tensioner is worn out, so it's not doing its job. So it's allowed these camshaft sprockets to jump back a little bit. Okay, so there's too much slack over here. Look at this. I can kind of just push this timing belt out if I can. Look at that. There's just too much slack. I can just kind of remove it. See that? And this is dangerous. Okay. Now, that noise we heard before we removed the timing belt, is because of these cams over here being off. And I believe those idler pulleys also are not good. I believe those idler pulleys, the bearings on the idler pulleys are worn out. But now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna let the customer know. At this point, we know that there could be a potential damage internal of the engine, but I've also seen engines being off, 2 teeth or 3 teeth and not causing any damage. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're not gonna freak out too much. We're gonna continue the process. We're gonna remove the motor mount now. After we remove the motor mount, we're gonna remove the timing belt, and then we're gonna move our camshaft sprockets forward a little bit so we can have this mark line up with this. And we're gonna do the same thing on this cam sprocket over here. Okay, and then we're gonna put our new timing belt. Okay, we're gonna install our new timing belt. We're also gonna replace our water pump and our timing belt tensioner. Okay, so now at this point, what we're gonna do is let's remove the motor mount first. So to get the motor mount removed, we're gonna have to put a jack under the oil pan. I'm gonna put a piece of wood between the oil pan and the jack. Since the oil pan is aluminum, you don't want to put a jack under the oil pan because it can crack it. Okay, so we're gonna get the engine's weight on the jack, and then we're gonna undo the motor mount. Okay, so the motor mount is over here. So we're gonna undo this bolt. We're gonna undo these 2 bolts over here. After we undo these 2 bolts, we're gonna undo another big bolt over here. So I'm gonna undo this one so we can remove the motor mount. Once the motor mount comes out, we're then gonna remove the motor mount bracket, which has 3 bolts that face this way. Okay, I'm gonna get the jack under the oil pan first. So I got a jack under the oil pan. So now the engine is supported by the jack. So now let's go under the hood and remove the motor mount. So I'm gonna undo these 2 bolts over here first. They are 14mm bolts. So we're gonna push this bracket out of the way. So now I'm gonna undo this 19mm bolt over here that holds this motor mount bracket in place. Oh, now this thing is moving, so I need to reinstall this bolt. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to undo this bolt up here first before I remove these ones. So here comes the motor mount main bolt. We're gonna get that out of the way. Now we can remove this bracket. So here comes the bracket that connects this motor mount bracket to the motor mount itself. So I'm gonna get this out of the way. All right. So at this point, we can either, actually I was gonna say we can either remove the motor mount or leave it on, but it looks like we have to undo it. Because to get this bracket out, we're gonna have to remove a bolt. There's a bolt under here. I won't be able to show it to you because everything is tight here, but once I get this bracket out, I will show it to you. I will show you the bolt that I'm talking about. So I'm gonna remove the motor mount now. The motor mount has 3 bolts that hold it in place. There's one over here, another one on this side, and there's another one back here. So I'm gonna remove the motor mount and then I will show you the bolt that I'm talking about. Especially over here behind this engine computer, everything is just so tight. All right, so now let's remove. There's a 10mm bolt over here that I have to remove so I can move this bracket. So there is a bracket over here that sits on top of the motor mount. So here it is, okay? This bracket sits on top of the motor mount and the wiring harness passes above this, okay? So these hold downs over here clip onto this bracket to hold the wiring harness down. So now we're gonna get this out of the way. Alright, so I got all our motor mount bolts removed. So here is our motor mount. We got one bolt over here, one short bolt over here, and then these two long bolts go right here. Okay, so this is how it sits. You have to make sure that you undo these two bolts, and they are 17mm bolts. So this one here, this one, and then this other one in the back. Okay, so now we're gonna get our motor mount out of the way. So these bolts over here are 14mm bolts. So here comes our motor mount bracket, and over here it has 3 bolts, one here, one here, and another one over here. So 1, 2, 3, okay? And these two go through the water pump. I think all of them go through the water pump, okay? And there is a 10mm bolt that was missing up here that holds this plastic harness down, but we're gonna have to put a 10mm bolt there. Okay, so now I'm gonna get this bracket out of the way. This pulley that you see over here, this is the water pump pulley. Okay, so now we're gonna remove the timing belt. So it's kind of hard to show you what I'm gonna be doing down here, especially when I remove the water pump. But once I remove the water pump, I will show you the water pump bolt. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is, since we have a lot of slack over here, did you guys see that? So I can literally remove the timing belt without any effort. I'm gonna bring you guys over here so I can show you what I just did. The one thing I have noticed is the amount of slack that we have over here. Okay, so I can even remove this timing belt with no effort. So no wonder the teeth over here on the camshaft sprocket jumped, because our tensioner wasn't doing its job. Look at this. This is abnormal, guys. So over here we have pretty good tension. We have good tension here, but over here our timing belt can just slip out very easily. So our timing belt tensioner is completely worn out. Okay, this is a problem. Okay, so now let's remove our timing belt. I mean, the back one moved. All right, so here comes our timing belt. So here is the belt, guys. Look at it. It's worn out. You see that? Okay, so we're gonna get our timing belt out of the way. So at this point, I'm going to remove our water pump. I didn't drain the radiator, so I'm gonna put a drain container under the vehicle, because when I remove the water pump, there will be coolant that's gonna leak out. Okay, I'm gonna remove the water pump. The water pump has a couple bolts around it. I will show you the water pump bolts after I remove it. Now here is the tensioner adjuster. Okay, we're gonna replace this. So we're gonna get this out of the way. So here comes the idler pulley. We're gonna get it out of the way. We're gonna replace this also, okay? It has some type of a special bolt. Okay. So now here comes the timing belt tensioner. So as you can see, the tensioner was leaking. You see how wet it is up here? So I'm glad we're replacing it. Okay? So this tensioner is defective. So I'm gonna get it out of the way. Alright, so we got all the water pump bolts removed. So now we're gonna tap it out. So right there, I have a drain container underneath. So all that coolant is going in the drain container. So now I'm gonna grab our water pump. Alright, so I picked up our water pump. So here it is. The water pump has 5 10mm bolt. So there's one that goes over here, one here, and 3 on this side. Okay? And then it has 2 dowel pins over here that guide it. Okay? So we're gonna replace this water pump. I'm gonna get it out of the way. So at this point, we got everything removed. Now the next step is gonna be, I'm gonna get an air nozzle. We're gonna dry off this area, and then we're gonna wipe down the mating surface of the water pump gasket. And after that, we're gonna start installing the new parts. So after cleaning this area, the next step is going to be the reverse process of the removal process. We're going to start putting everything back together, okay? So now let's clean up this area first. Alright, so we got everything cleaned. I'm gonna show you the new parts that we're gonna install, and after that we're gonna start by installing the water pump. So here are the parts that I got from the dealer. I told my customer that when I do this type of project, I don't like installing aftermarket parts because it's not worth it. The price difference between the aftermarket parts and dealer parts isn't big, so I recommend installing dealer parts when I do this type of repairs. So I'm gonna show you the part numbers. So here is our timing belt. So this is the Honda part number. Okay, so I got this from the dealer. And this is our idler pulley. So here is our part number. Okay, so that's the pulley right there. And then here is the water pump. So as you can see, Honda genuine parts. Okay, that's the water pump part number. And then this is our timing belt tensioner. And here is the part number. Okay. And over here is our tensioner adjuster. That's how they call it. Okay. So this is the tensioner adjuster, and here is the part number. Okay, so we got our parts. I already got the parts before I even brought the vehicle in the shop because I knew this is what we were gonna replace. So now that we saw all our new parts, now let's take the water pump to the vehicle and install it. So now we're gonna start putting the water pump bolts back on.